Bangladesh is celebrating the birth centenary of its founding father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the golden jubilee of its liberation from Pakistan, and 50 years of the establishment of diplomatic ties with India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to visit Bangladesh to take part in the celebrations. Today, we have with us India's High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Mr. Vikram Doraiswamy. He will be speaking about the various aspects of India-Bangladesh relationship in the context of the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Bangladesh. Welcome, sir, for this interview. Sir, India-Bangladesh relations have been exemplary, a model of relationship for the neighbors. How do you look at the current phase of relationship between the two countries?
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be on Doordarshan. It's good to see you again. Look, as you correctly said, the relationship has always been of extremely high priority for India. It is in fact one of our most prized and most important relationships. So from that standpoint, it is a particular pleasure to be able to say that India-Bangladesh ties are at their highest ever level since the 1970s. We can see this in the way in which there is complete political consensus in India of the importance of Bangladesh, the importance of a strong relationship with Bangladesh, and the importance of developing this relationship further. Our government, since 2014, has put in a lot of effort in this relationship, and indeed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, for her part, and her government, has, since she came to power for the second and the current ongoing period, has consistently prioritized the steady improvement of bilateral relations. It is not recognized enough how much the relationship has changed. It is today a relationship in which there is great comfort in being able to recognize each other's importance and special position in our respective foreign policies. It is also a fact that we have done things, resolved issues that have plagued us for decades, and in few other countries can you find equivalent examples. For instance, resolution of our land boundary. The actual effort to find and transfer pieces of land and to resolve issues of enclaves is unique. Very few countries have ever done this anywhere in the world. So this kind of a thing is something that has given the relationship new strength. I would also want to include here the fact that India and Bangladesh are among the very few countries in the world, certainly in Asia, that have actually peacefully resolved even a maritime boundary dispute through a tribunal process, with both countries accepting the fact that the judgment would be binding on both countries. So, we have done things that are unique and I think not always fully recognized in our own countries, leave alone the world. So, to answer your question in one phrase, when our leadership talks about this being a golden age of India-Bangladesh relationship, a Shonali Adhyaya, as they say in Bangla, I think that's absolutely correct.
How do you look at the importance of the visit of the Prime Minister to Bangladesh on this occasion?
Well, that's, I think, a very specific and a very important question. Look, we need to remember that the COVID pandemic is still going on. In most parts of the world, high-level interactions have more or less dried up. Everybody carries out high-level business, and indeed most kinds of business, virtually these days. And yet, this will be the first visit of our Prime Minister outside India since the pandemic broke out. It shows the priority that our government attaches to the relationship with Bangladesh and these very important celebratory occasions. It also shows the fact that Bangladesh has reached out at the level of the Prime Minister to invite our Prime Minister to be the chief guest at this very, very important national day. 26th of March is Bangladesh's National Day, and our Prime Minister will be the sole chief guest, is a clear sign of the mutual regard that the two leaders hold each other in. So I think it is a highly significant moment that shows to the world and to our own people the priority we attach to each other. So yes, I would say that this is a very unique, very special moment.
What are the specific areas which you think are important at this point of time, so far as the Bangladesh-India relations are concerned?
India-Bangladesh relations, look, we need to recognize that we are each other's biggest land neighbors. We have our largest land boundary, longest land boundary is with Bangladesh. It's almost 4,100 kilometers. In any relationship that is so intense, so connected historically, culturally, even today as economies, and it's only getting more connected, there will always be a small set of issues that will keep arising in terms of the movement of people, in terms of trade, in terms of sharing of natural resources. But the larger picture that should inspire us is the fact that the world is moving to far higher levels of integration for benefit. Even the COVID pandemic showed us that there is value in nearshoring production chains and inshoring production chains, which is to say you try and shorten the supply chain for production of goods to the most manageable, so that in complex times like the pandemic, the production chain doesn't snap. So recognizing this and looking ahead to the next 50 years, I'd say the relationship should really focus on identifying our strengths, working together to build on these strengths, and recognizing how best we can leverage our unique the unique opportunities we offer each other. Let me explain that a bit. Bangladesh is today, if you look at its location, it is so well positioned to be the fulcrum of the trade and connectivity opportunities, not just for India and its northeast, but also for Nepal, for Bhutan, and even indeed for the Bay of Bengal area. So if we consider Bangladesh's USP, its unique selling proposition, to be as a strategic hub, to be a high quality producer of goods and an integrator of transportation systems, then I think the relationship could grow very rapidly in the direction of creating a sort of an irreversible economic partnership between us, which I think would be in the best interests of both peoples, because it would mean businesses would do business together, more joint ventures would arise, transportation solutions would become one of the big drivers of subcontinental economic integration. And looking ahead, we could also then look at leveraging our own scales of operation for cheaper energy, for cheaper electricity, for cross-regional movement of power, gas, petroleum products. Each of these things would help transform the totality of economics in our region. And when we do that, economics will then drive politics, which I think would be in the best long-term interests of our region, so that trade, business, strong commercial partnerships would actually be the big drivers of not just India, Bangladesh, but the entire sub-region's growth.
Now, connectivity issues between India and Bangladesh have been growing. There have been so many new things, and people tie is also quite closely linked to the connectivity issue. So, how do you look at this issue, sir? The new challenges to connectivity, the new opportunities that exist between India and Bangladesh, the Maitri Setu that has been inaugurated, and so many other things. Could you please tell us about the new initiatives on connectivity and people-to-people ties that is also linked to it, sir?
Thank you. That connects up quite neatly with what I just said. So let me expand a bit on that idea. Now, if you see, till 1965, much of the connectivity between parts of Bengal, on our own side, also went through Bangladesh. As many as 6 railway crossings operated to move goods and people across what was originally one integrated region. After 1965, all of this connectivity was lost. What we have done with the strong vision of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the determined direction of our government under Prime Minister Modi has been to rebuild much of this connectivity. So out of the 5 cross-border crossings that existed on the railway side till the 1960s, out of the 6, we have restored 5. The 5th was just restored in December last year, connecting in the North Bengal area between Chilahati and Haldibari. The 6th one in the Assam area between Shahbazpur and Kulaura is still a work in progress. We hope by sometime next year it should be done. There are issues with, land acquisition, etc., just still going on. And we're building new rail connectivity, which will also connect up between Agartala and Akhoda, which will then give us seamless connectivity on between the Chattogram-Dhaka line and also into India, into the northeast. So that's just railways. Roads, there are projects in place to connect up and improve the quality of roads that run from Benapole all the way to Bhanga, which is on one side of the Padda River, where the Maba Expressway is coming up. There are projects to upgrade roads in the northeast connective area. You mentioned Maitri Setu, the road that will connect it beyond from Ramgarh on the Bangladesh side towards Chattogram needs upgradation. We've offered a line of credit for that. The Japanese are also offering support for the bridges on that road. So the idea is to build the hard infrastructure of connectivity in terms of road and railways, and through that to facilitate the movement of goods and services, but also people. We have two non-stop trains running from Khulna to Kolkata and Dhaka to Kolkata, where we provide end-to-end clearances. So customs and immigration are done at the ends, not in the borders. If you can do that for people, why not for goods? You should be able to actually move goods end-to-end and carry out customs clearances on either end, which is what the intention of our Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal motor vehicles agreement is all about. The idea that we simplify the movement of goods. In particular, this is needed because we have motor vehicles agreements between India and Nepal and India and Bhutan, but not between India and Bangladesh. So this 4-nation MVA will increase that possible connectivity. Bangladesh has also indicated its interest in joining the India-Myanmar-Thailand trilateral highway, which would also involve the opportunity for connectivity through our northeast. So again, there will be paperwork to sort out the legalities of moving each other's vehicles through each other's territory. We also are working on inland waterways. Historically, if you see, during the medieval period and thereafter during even the British colonial period, the rivers served as the main channels of transportation of goods from the northeast and from the mountains. Now, that has actually died out. And making rivers usable again by cross-border routes has been one of the big focuses of our government. And the Bangladesh side has also been extremely cooperative on this. So the net result has been that we are now through joint dredging exercises, some of which we're doing on grant basis, through projects to build connective infrastructure like a container terminal at Ashuganj River Port. We are close to a point where we can look at rivers being used for commercial purposes, for moving goods, but even for tourism. There's a very enterprising company in Calcutta that is looking at creating luxury tourism on high quality boats that will take people through the Sundarbans, to Dhaka, to Calcutta, and the other way around, in what could only be described as 5 stars on decks. So, human creativity and business will lead the rest, provided we create the opportunities for them. Which brings me to a second part that is equally necessary, along with the upgradation of ports, roads, rail, river infrastructure, and even airports. What we really need to look at is the regulatory systems that connect all of this. The World Bank did a study recently, which was published last week, and I participated in the release of that study, which pointed out that the India-Bangladesh border is a thick border, which essentially means that regulatory processes on both sides are so stringent that it is very difficult for goods and services to move across. Difficulty, in other words, means more time. So it takes more time for goods to cross, days, sometimes weeks on end. More time means more money lost. More money lost means that the cost of trade, or the cost that is attached to the movement of goods, is passed on to consumers. So it means higher cost of goods and services for the consumers in Bangladesh or in India, as the case may be. Now this makes no sense. We really need to have a more business-friendly approach to it. We need to multiply the number of ports through which goods can move through. We need to increase the integration between custom systems. We need to look at ways in which we create multimodal nodes and hubs of goods transshipment. I cited, for instance, an example where not far from Jashore, there is a point where the river, which is the Bhairav River, the road heading towards Khulna railway station and Mongla port, and the rail line, which also heads to Khulna, are all literally meters apart. And rather than waiting for any infrastructure to come up, essentially business is just finding the opportunity. Trains stop there. Goods are offloaded informally onto trucks or from the river onto trucks. And the net result is huge traffic congestion. The road, which is not designed to take on heavy trucks, is getting damaged by it. So there is a cost to the economy also from this. Inefficiencies, fundamentally, economics is economics. Inefficiencies effectively add to cost of doing business. So if we keep adding costs to doing business, we reduce the value or the economic attractiveness of investment in both our countries. And ultimately, who does it work against? It works against our own people. So I think what the minister was trying to say was that if we get the connectivity picture right, and it is already beginning to come into place on both sides, we will immediately be able to see direct economic benefits from this. Let me share with you what sort of benefits. We have 1160 megawatts of power flowing from India into Bangladesh. Because of a number of good decisions that were taken by both sides, we are now able to supply well-priced power, because power production, given the scale of India's power production, is per unit lower than in Bangladesh. So we're able to provide even at a power at a price where we make money and Bangladesh saves money. Now that is an example of where benefits can be achieved. We're building a pipeline to bring high-speed diesel from Siliguri into Parbatipur in northern Bangladesh. That pipeline will effectively provide high-speed diesel, premium quality with low sulfur, to storage units directly in Bangladesh without it having to be imported from abroad by Cape-sized vessels, transferred onto smaller barges at Chattogram, taken up the river, then transported onto trucks. So there are 2 to 3 phases of transportation. In each there is evaporation loss, cost added. So what happens? The cost is higher. So essentially the idea is that both of us will benefit, and indeed further afield Nepal and Bhutan will also benefit from greater integration. So this is what the minister was trying to get at.
At a time of such a huge humanitarian crisis at the global level, when the challenges for India were no less grave, India was able to supply a very generous amount of vaccine to Bangladesh. Subsequent to the last year's video conferencing called by the Prime Minister of India with SAARC leaders, there has been so many important activities that have taken place between India and Bangladesh. Do you think it can serve as a template for future in terms of such natural crisis or humanitarian crisis between countries of this region, and specifically between India and Bangladesh?
Thank you. Yes, I think you're right. If you look at it, I think at the outbreak of the COVID crisis last March, just about a year ago, it became fairly clear that this was not going to be one of those challenges that each country could just close down the doors and survive on its own. We were going to also need to find ways of cooperating with each other, specifically in a subcontinent like ours, which is so closely connected. Our borders are, as I said, so extensive. Our people-to-people ties are so strong. So it made sense for us to work together to combat a pandemic like the world had never seen before through unprecedented new levels of cooperation. The Prime Minister's initiative to put together a SAARC leaders conference, which took place in March last year, and to come up with the idea of a SAARC fund for COVID, which each nation would operate on its own, but set aside money for those resources. Through the year also we managed, even with our own challenges, to ensure that some amount of support could be provided to our neighbors in terms of testing kits, masks, PPE kits, even medicine, the supply of HCQ, when it was seen as one of the ways in which COVID could be at least managed. All these were signs of our consistent effort to maintain partnerships between us in our neighborhood during the COVID phase. As we moved towards the delivery of finished vaccines, we also started work to prepare the ground in India, but also with our partners through online experience sharing platforms where we talked about how we were approaching the challenge of inoculating so many millions, hundreds of millions of people how we were coping with the challenge of ensuring cold chains for the movement of drugs, access to quality syringes and needles, the totality of the challenge. When you think about it, these are huge administrative challenges. And recognizing that these are similar challenges that our neighbors were going to face, we worked together with all of them to share knowledge, to see how what they had in mind, and to see if we could replicate each other's best practices. So this practice has also happened over the last several months. As the vaccines then were rolled out, Bangladesh was one of the first countries to receive not only their own contracted purchase of vaccines, but even before that, a tranche of 2 million doses of vaccines. Today, if you see from the purchases that were made plus the gift pack of dosages from India, Bangladesh is today the largest recipient of India-made vaccines in the world. We've supplied something like 54 million vaccines. Well, as of earlier this month, it was 54 million. Maybe it's about 60 million now. And Bangladesh alone has about 9 million plus. So it is a sign of the importance that we attach to a country that is, after all, the 8th largest population in the world, and a recognition of the fact that as we've quoted on all the dosages of vaccines that are going out on the containers, may all be free from disease, which is our own civilizational approach to health. So the idea is that no one country can sort of isolate itself and make itself well from this disease. We're all going to have to cooperate. So I see this health cooperation as a means of going forward, and I'm confident that we will be able to build on this to take forward health cooperation between India and Bangladesh, but also within the rest of the region.
So Bangladesh is the largest partner in development assistance that is given out by India. Almost 1/4 of all development assistance offered by India to any country in the world is given to Bangladesh, close to 8 billion. Now there have been around 46 projects going on, and out of which half of them are at the tender or planning stages. I believe there have been many attempts by the High Commission of India and the Government of India to expedite the process and to make sure that the utilization of the LOC fund that is given to Bangladesh is made faster and the projects are implemented faster. What are the new things that have been happening in this regard, sir?
Yes, that's an important question. Look, obviously the money that has been set aside was set aside for a purpose. And our intention is indeed to be able to deliver on these projects as quickly as possible. So what we've tried to do is to identify the challenges and to see where we can, at least from our own side, offer means of multitasking some of the processes. In other words, where it's possible to parallel track some things, we should be able to parallel track them. So, for instance, where you have a process which is currently linear, where you do tendering, then you identify the successful company, then you draft a contract, then the contract is approved, then the tender is signed. So, a lot of time gets spent in that. Some of these things can be done in parallel. After all, you will have a company that will win the bid, never mind which one. You can actually multitask some of these jobs and put them on parallel tracks, so that once the tender scrutiny process is done, you can actually move very rapidly through all the subsequent phases at more or less the same time. So you could save many months of delay on that. In terms of DPRs, we could certainly increase our support to ensuring that draft project reports are prepared faster, and that the process is well integrated with the rest of the Bangladesh project proposals and approvals process, which, by the way, is a fairly robust one. They do a very good job in terms of scrutinizing projects and taking things forward. What has happened, of course, is that many of the projects were originally finalized when the DPPs were new or were not even prepared, when the project was just announced. So this has actually created some delays for us. But moving ahead, I think there is an opportunity now to course correct and at least move ahead on the ones where the DPPs are ready, and to expedite the process of ensuring that quality projects are brought to financing stages, and the financing mechanisms that we prepare are multi-tracked so that things can move forward. In this year itself, I'm fairly confident we will see a significant increase in the pace of disbursements, because we have a number of projects that have now been brought back on the rails. through the efforts of the partner entities in Bangladesh, so that we believe that they can be brought to funding stages very fast. So if that happens, I think the utilization rates will improve markedly in the next year or two.
So in the dynamic geostrategic reality of the world, the Indo-Pacific area is becoming very important. India has been giving a lot of importance to the Indo-Pacific area. I understand Bangladesh enjoys a very important position in this whole scheme of things. How do you look at the role of Bangladesh in the emerging Indo-Pacific vision of India?
Look, ultimately, it is for Bangladesh to decide how it wants to approach this concept. As our foreign minister said in December last year, it is not a forecast of tomorrow's, of something that's happening tomorrow. It is actually yesterday's reality, which is that the Indo-Pacific is an already existing construct. It is a reality in economic, geopolitical, and even transportation terms. You know, the confluence of the two oceans is a fact. Now, in this, Bangladesh is, of course, a hugely important country. As I said, it's the eighth largest population in the world. Its location is critical in the intersect between South and Southeast Asia. And therefore, from our perspective, Bangladesh is a logical and natural partner in further developing this idea, both through various sub-regional initiatives in which it is part, such as BBIN or BIMSTEC, but also in terms of plurilateral initiatives of which it is a part again, like the IORA, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, of which Bangladesh will be the chair in coming, I think, later this year. So, if you see, it is a fact that the Bay of Bengal is part of the Indo-Pacific. It is a fact that countries in the region, including the ASEAN nations, of which Bangladesh is neighbor to one, and India, already have an Indo-Pacific perspective. So we think there is a logical reality to the Indo-Pacific. There is an opportunity for Bangladesh to also be part of developing its own approach to this construct. And there is benefit for Bangladesh in being able to work with other partners as a more maritime, or shall we say, an oceanic dimension to our foreign policies, our respective foreign policies develops. So I'd say this is certainly a work in progress, and it's a work which I think is going to be very exciting as Bangladesh's own approach to this evolves in coming months.
Thank you so much, sir, for talking to Doordarshan.
It's a great pleasure to be on your show. It's good to see you again.